This video looks different to my usual videos, I know, but the reason I'm doing that is so that I can make this the most palatable way to present this information. Otherwise, this video will be longer than 20 minutes, and none of us want that. I definitely don't. But, so, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about why the sequel trilogy has essentially, or is, failing. There's 2 points to this. Rey and the overall setting. So let's start with the easiest to cover, that being Rey. Now, my take is a little bit different to most people's, not completely, but I like to think I present it in a different way. And the way I would like to present all this is through the Old Republic cinematic trailers, because they are the epitome of perfect Star Wars, in my opinion, done by not George Lucas, basically. So, that little thing right there is a perfect example of, like, you probably think how spicy that picture looks. Yes, it does. And the reason why is because they knew what the hell they were doing. Anyway, first cinematic trailer from the Old Republic. Basically, if you come in here, it's a big battle, and you have Satele Shan, double-bladed blue lightsaber woman, and this guy's name escapes me, but he's basically the Jedi Master of Satele Shan. They have this big, really cool battle here. These are the type of things I was hoping to see in the sequel trilogy. These were the battles I was hyped for, you know. But we never got anything like this, rarely. The lightsaber combat in the sequel trilogy has just been... hardly ever do you see it, and when you do, it's pretty underwhelming. But either way, that's not what I want to cover. So, Satele here, kind of a funny angle. She is kind of like how Rey should have been done. She's a great prodigy. She's going to become stronger than her master. She's going to become like the savior. She's awesome. But she's had a great foundation of training. She goes on to learn the rest herself, but her training gave her the strength to do that on her own. She didn't just do it on her own because she could. It wasn't handed to her. She was taught, she went through grueling training, and through that, she was able to train herself the rest of the way. But as of right now, she is not stronger than her master because, well, her master is her master. I feel like that should make the most amount of sense. Now, that is how I think Rey should have been done up till now, unless they change something about her in Episode 9 that reveals everything about her being okay up to this point. Now, if you look at this guy, probably the strongest, or one of the strongest Jedi Masters of the time of the Old Republic. So, he hurls all of this metal at Darth Malgus. Pretty good force feat, right? Pretty amazing, especially this turbine that he throws. Malgus jumps through it, which is maybe a bit more impressive, I don't know. But think about that, okay? Think about how adept you have to be with the Force to do that. Think about the fact that Yoda was one of the only other people that could pull off something like this. Yoda lifted up something twice this size. But Yoda being one of the only other people to be able to do something like this, at least on the light side, it's a bit easy on the dark side because you kind of fuel your rage more to be able to pick up things like that. But you get what I'm saying, right? And if we go to now The Last Jedi, yeah, whatever, reborn, who cares? So, we have this moment here where she kind of strains, like minimal 30% effort maybe in her face there. And then, look at this. As we all know, she lifts a million fucking boulders up in, okay, it's not a million, it's more like 50 or 60. But those are some big boy boulders, dude. Those are some big boy boulders that she just lifts up. Seemingly without trying, rarely. You know? And it just pisses me off. It's like, unless they reveal something in Episode 9 about this, how the hell is this even possible? You know, at her level. Luke's teachings weren't really teaching. All that Luke did besides making her feel the Force once or twice was basically trying to tell her how the Jedi are pieces of shit, which isn't really any sort of training, except maybe like psychological training, I guess you could say. But, you know, beyond that, the fact that she can just do this is stupid. And also when you watch Yoda do it, when you watch that other Jedi Master do it, they are straining. Like, I remember Yoda doing it, and he was like... So, this just makes literal zero amounts of sense. And not only does it make no amount of sense, there is a more compelling way to do this scene. Like, okay, so just imagine this cave here, this entrance. Imagine all the boulders in front of it. And instead of Rey just lifting them up all serenely, you know, imagine what she did instead was, because she shouldn't be this adept with the Force, you know, imagine that she gets all these boulders taken away, you know, but she does it through, she hurls one to the side, but I mean with the Force, obviously, hurls one to the side with the Force, hurls one to the other side, hurls, and we see a montage almost of just like really quickly, like screaming and like getting them to the sides with all of her Force strength, and then we reveal like a shot from Poe's angle, walking out of the cave, and just seeing her on her knees, on all fours, just panting, you know, and she looks up at them, and she's just drenched almost in sweat on her face, and she is just nearly about to collapse from what she's done. Would that be so much more compelling, so much more interesting to watch on screen? And not only would it make us like Rey more, because we would see that she is putting 100% of her effort into what she needs to do to save her friends. That is what we see, overcoming odds despite the challenge that it is. Whereas with this, all we see is that she just kind of does it, right? Which almost gives me the impression that if this was any harder for her, she wouldn't bother. That's what I took away from it. If this was any harder for her, she wouldn't have even bothered to try, or she would have given up really easily, you know? So it would have made her way more of a likable character if we saw her put 100% of her effort into saving her friends, or just saving the people that she cares about. Because I should say the only friend of hers really in that group at the moment is Finn. So more saving the Resistance, I guess. Now that I've talked about that, it should be pretty clear my problem with Rey. They can maybe fix it by like she's a clone of someone, and she has all this prior knowledge about the Force but forgot who she was, and that's how she can do all this crap. You know, that I could see. You know, that I could definitely see, because that was basically Starkiller in Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2. That I could definitely understand. Next thing I want to talk about is setting, and that is where this one comes into play, because I think it just shows so many beautiful things about setting. So this is a very prequel vibe here, right? We see this is very prequel-esque, and you know, all the Jedi, it's very prequel-y, but it's also so unique. Just the way it looks, how much more dark and gritty it is. You know, you could say this mirrors Order 66, but it's all Sith. It's not this big conspiracy, it was more of just an ambush. You know, whereas Order 66 was a long-time conspiracy waiting to happen after, like, years of prolonged war, where Sidious was basically making this war happen just so he could weaken everyone he wanted to, including getting Jedi killed through this war, so Order 66 would be easier to execute. Whereas this is just a big surprise attack. Now, what I want to highlight here is not only does it have a prequel vibe to it, it looks like its own thing at the same time, you know? And I can illustrate that by not only does this look more gritty, it has its own very unique costume, designs, and the interior of the temple actually looks kind of different to the Coruscant one. Oh, well, this is the Coruscant one, but the Coruscant one of the prequel trilogy, sorry. And then, if we get to this big battle, one thing I want to highlight here, this Jedi guy, I was rooting for him the whole time. Like, yeah, we know nothing about him, basically. But just the way he carries himself, the way he does things, you know, the way he has this kind of no-give-up attitude, you know, that made him just a really likable character in the, like, what, 2 minutes we see him, ever? You know, like, I care about this guy more than I care about Rey. I kind of knew he was going to die, but because of how much passion he was putting into his fight, and because of how much you could see how much he cared about what he was doing, I ended up rooting for him way more than I've ever rooted for Rey in the sequel trilogy. And then he dies, and I was like, oh, crap. But, like, you kind of know it's going to happen. Now, the fact that I can care about this guy's fate more than Rey after, like, 2 minutes of screen time should show something, you know? I will say that was only after The Last Jedi ruined her character for me, because I didn't mind her so much in Episode 7. I quite liked her in Episode 7, but in Episode 8, her character got completely... Well, I probably shouldn't say that because of YouTube's guidelines, but her character got completely defiled. Yeah, in Episode 8, and they didn't really take her anywhere, but somehow she got more powerful. So... the fact that I can care for this guy as a character more when all I've seen him do is be determined and care about his fellow Jedi and soldiers when he hasn't even uttered a word. I don't care about him that much, but I care about him more than Rey. Like, you know, I was kind of rooting for him. Is just... I think it shows something very important. Like I've said, this does have its own prequel-era looks to it. And that's fine, you know, but it has its own uniqueness too. Like, for example, this armor. Yes, maybe it is kind of representing the Clone Wars TV show a little bit, but even so, when did we ever see Sith in the Clone Wars TV series or anything wear armor like Mulgus has? Like, look at those big shoulder pads, dude. Like, the only thing that's close is Savage Opress, and even that isn't at this level. And then if we come here, what I really want to highlight is it has its own original trilogy vibe. This is very original trilogy. The ships and the Star Destroyers looks very original trilogy to me, but in a very unique way. Like, that's basically a mix between a TIE Interceptor and a V-Wing, which I just really appreciate. And then if we come back to this shot, you see all those droids over there? Those droids is basically the prequel trilogy part of it. So they have this amazing blend of original trilogy aspects, prequel trilogy aspects, and their own tone to it, which is all this grittiness that you see over here, basically. So, Star Wars: The Old Republic does things so amazingly because it is Star Wars in its epitome, and not because it looks like the original trilogy, not because it looks like the prequel trilogy, but because it does its own thing. The thing about this is that it rhymes. It doesn't mimic. And I feel like the sequel trilogy mimics sometimes. Especially in The Last Jedi. It's been hailed as this really, like, original movie, but it's basically just mimicking parts of the original trilogy and then inversing other parts, which I don't find... It doesn't take much brain power to do, if you ask me. This setting is just way more unique. And I was hoping for something with the sequel trilogy to, yeah, maybe have aspects of the original trilogy because it's only 30 years after. But they could have easily just, you know, they could have treated Luke with respect, first and foremost. They could have maybe not been so overt with their copying. Like, 30 years have passed. We can get some new ships in Episode 7 as opposed to revamped X-Wings. You know what I mean? And as for the fact that it's 30 years ahead, honestly, the new trilogy could have taken place 100 years after. What would have been the problem with that? Now, I'm not saying I hate the sequel trilogy. I like Episode 7. I hate Episode 8. I will not lie about that. But I like Episode 7. If Episode 9 distinguishes itself enough and is unique enough, then, hey, I might enjoy the sequel trilogy as a whole. Episode 8 has just been such a low point for the sequel trilogy, though, and I saw Episode 7 as being the introductory, you know, the callback, and Episode 8 being the one where they really did something new and fresh, not just fucked with us, basically. So if Episode 9 can change all that somehow and make me like the sequel trilogy, then hell yeah. hell yeah, I'll like episode 7 and 9 and maybe a bit of 8 if they explain things properly with 8. You know. Otherwise, Star Wars, at least as far as the mainline films are concerned, is basically dead for me, at least with the sequel trilogy. Rogue One I can enjoy, you know, sure, whatever. But that's about it at this point. Hopefully The Mandalorian's good. Hopefully Clone Wars Season 7 is good. Because Dave Filoni, you know, he's basically George Lucas 2.0. Otherwise, this is just a colossal failure. But yeah, hopefully you understand my 2 points. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. Put it in the comments. If you agree with me, put it in the comments too. And let's just have a great big old discussion. Sorry for this long video. I do these from time to time when I just really need to vent. But either way, this has been the Randy Andy Show. And I'll see you in the next video. Notification bell and stuff. Thanks. Boom, boom, boom. Fuck. I got locked into an animation. I went off the bridge. Gotta be kidding. Oh no.